the top of Castle Sant'Angelo, the Archangel Michael stands firmly on his feet. He's putting the sword back in its sheath. The fight is won, the plague defeated. We're at the end of the 6th century after Christ, and 1500 years ago we didn't have many experts or virologists to listen to. So Pope Gregory the Great arranged for a procession that gathered the people of Rome following an icon of the Virgin Mary and heading towards St. Peter's Basilica down the street. When they saw the apparition of the Archangel Michael at the top of the castle, they felt that their prayers had been answered. So just imagine as they are converging on this very same bridge.
Excuse me for eavesdropping, but actually I don't think it was the same bridge as what we're looking at here is what Bernini created in the 1600s.
That is true. This is a later version of that original bridge. And she is right. Folks, let me introduce you to Antonella.
And let me introduce you to Carla.
We're both guides here in Rome, and we'll take you on a walk around the streets of the city, chasing the presence of past plagues.
This impressive building behind me wasn't always intended as a castle. Originally it was the tomb of a very important Roman emperor, Emperor Hadrian. Hadrian ruled in the 2nd century after Christ, and he decided that he needed a new tomb when the family one had filled up, the one on the other side of the river, which we know as the tomb of Emperor Augustus. So we know that the ashes of some of Hadrian's successors of the 2nd century after Christ were actually buried in here. And this is interesting because we are talking of the time period called the Antonine period. And that is when we had a very important ancient plague which killed hundreds, thousands of Roman people, both in the city and in the empire.
So, okay, there is a plague involved.
Yes.
I thought that you were going off topic.
No.
The Antonine plague,
Yes.
indeed. Terrible disease, maybe smallpox, they say, maybe measles.
Yes.
3rd century AD, right?
2nd century.
2nd century AD. I'm getting my centuries mixed up.
Yeah. I think we need to go for a coffee. Come on.
I'm getting my centuries mixed up because in the 3rd century after Christ, another epidemic broke out in the empire, one that caused up to 5,000 deaths a day in Rome alone.
This is the Cyprian plague.
Yes, named after Cyprian, the Bishop of Carthage, who described it. And from his reports, we know that it wasn't like the bubonic plague, it was more like a form of viral influenza similar to the Ebola virus of today.
And it lasted more than 10 years,
Yes,
right?
yes. Or maybe we would say today there were different outbreaks of the same disease. Turns out that throughout this period, the Christian doctors and carers were amongst the few that were not abandoning the sick.
And this consolidated the Christian faith throughout the Roman Empire.
Yes, because more people were converting to Christianity following their example. Yes, because it's just about the right amount of milk, just a little dash, unlike cappuccino, which for me is too much milk for this time of the day.
It is.
You like your coffee straight, yeah? I do.
So isn't this where Raphael's girlfriend lived?
Raphael's the painter.
Well, not the turtle.
Okay.
He means La Fornarina.
Right, the baker's daughter. No, I think that one lived somewhere else in Rome, across the river.
That one, how many did he have?
Well, he's known to have had a few. He was described as a very amorous man.
With a great fondness for women.
Yes, in fact, they say he died of syphilis, another contagious disease that spread around Europe between the 14 and the 1500s.
Actually, he's buried in the Pantheon. Shall we go there?
Yes, let's go. You know, I love how Rome can stage some surprises for you. You turn a corner and something this magnificent can come out.
This is the Pantheon, and it means temple to all the gods. It was built by the Roman Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century after Christ, the same Roman emperor who had built his mausoleum on the other side of the river, which we saw earlier this morning. It is a masterpiece of ancient engineering, and 400 years approximately after the death of the Roman emperor, it was made into a Christian church, which is exactly what it still is to this day.
On the 6th of April of the year 1520, Raphael died. It was a shocking death. He was only 37 years old. He was taken to his bed by a sudden fever, but he did manage before dying to express his desire to be buried inside the building, this building that he loved most in Roman architecture. Right after Hadrian's time, the Antonine Plague broke out that we mentioned earlier on. We know about this disease more because it was described by Galen, one of the few known doctors of antiquity. He gives us full accounts of the symptoms. The disease was something similar to measles or smallpox, and understood how dangerous the disease was.
Yes. He understood it so well that he ran away all the way back to his hometown in Asia Minor, which is Turkey today, the town or city of Pergamon. And whilst he was over there, the emperor called him back. And when he got back to northern Italy this time, that's where the army was stationed, there was another outbreak of the plague. This time, though, he said that he had a vision, that he had seen in his dream the god of medicine actually telling him to leave, to go away. But the emperor didn't fall for it, and he said, no, you stay. So Galen had to stay at a distance.
Did he catch the disease?
No, not that we know of.
The number of people that died during this period somehow ended up undermining the Roman still-like self-confidence. We're in the 2nd century AD. They had political stability. They had won a lot of wars. They proved themselves capable of daring architectural achievements. And yet, this situation caused what many historians identify as the beginning of the crisis of the Roman Empire. Close to 3 million people live in Rome today, but you can still find a quiet corner where you can savor history. On one side, the splendid theatre of Marcellus, and then the 3 columns, which is all that we have left, of the Temple of Apollo Socianus.
And the Temple of Apollo Socianus is something that is very interesting. Although we're seeing it behind to the back of these railings, it is a temple in an area where long before this one was built, there was a temple dedicated to Apollo, but this time Apollo Medicus, which means in Latin doctor. And the reason why it was built, we know for sure, was as a thank you to Apollo for having saved many people from dying, probably, in a plague at that very same time.
So, in the 5th century before Christ, we recorded plagues already from that time. Well, of course, the city of Rome was always quite densely populated, and diseases spread more rapidly in this way. And also the Romans traveled.
Yes, and we must never forget the importance of the army, how much it brought back from the new countries, including illnesses that had never been heard of before.
These plagues have been a real part of the history of antiquity, and significantly, of course, they carry that element of uncertainty that has led people to seek for supernatural help.
True, not only the Romans had Apollo the healer, but also Apollo's son, who was brought to Rome from Greece to fight sickness and plagues, and that is the god Asclepius.
The Temple of Asclepius is on the island. island became the island of medicine is quite interesting. It goes back all the way to the 3rd century before Christ, when some form of terrible illness must have attacked the city, must have taken over the city, and the Romans had only one choice, and that was to send their ambassadors to Epidaurus. Epidaurus in Greece, where there was the temple, of course, of the medical god, the doctor of medicine, Asclepius.
The son of Apollo.
The son of Apollo, the one we mentioned before when we were at the temple of Apollo Sosianus. And the story is that once they got there, they asked priests, what do we do? What can we do? And the priests said, well, what we can do is give you the symbol of the god who will take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. And so the symbol was the snake. And so the snake is placed on a ship. The ship comes up the River Tiber eventually, and as they're getting ready to dock, somewhere here probably, the snake disappears. And they found it fast asleep on the top of the island. So that was what made them decide that this was the place, this was where the god had chosen to stay.
They built the temple at that point.
Yes, the temple was built on the actual top. You see from all over the centre of Rome.
And the island was given the shape of
And
ship.
the island was made to look like a ship. Yes, the ship that brought the snake. The ship that brought the god who saved Rome, or at least they believe, or would save, or they could turn to when they needed to ask for help.
Here you can really see what is left of the prow of the ship. You can see that the island was shaped as a ship. You can see the big blocks of travertine stone with which the islander was given its appearance as a ship. And here is the snake.
Can you see the outline here of the god, Asclepius, how beautiful it is? You can actually see the hair, you can see the most beautiful shoulders, these powerful shoulders. You can actually see here on the side still the beard of the god.
And the god here is holding the rod.
Yes, of course. Look at the beautiful shape of the snake that's coming around and continuing even here on the boat, the symbol of the god himself.
Curious that we only see one snake here.
Yes.
We're so used to the double.
This indeed is the symbol of Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine, one snake over one rod, which also became associated with Hippocrates, the renowned ancient doctor.
The two winged snakes coiling up the rod is instead the symbol of Mercury, Hermes, Jupiter's messenger. Over time and in some parts of the world, this symbol too became associated with medicine and the art of healing.
The 18th century church of St. Bartholomew
Replaces an older church exactly on the location of the temple of Asclepius.
And the monument that we are seeing in the middle of the square is where there used to be an obelisk, which was probably the mast of the ship.
Most Romans today may come to the island for one of our numberless strolls or because they're using the hospital of Fate Bene Fratelli, the Do Good Brothers. This is an order of carers established at the end of the 1500s who were quite famous in their day for the very humane treatment of the sick and also for important and revolutionary practices in medical care. One for all. For example, they established that there should be only one bed for each patient, which at the time was not obvious. At the time, beds were shared, even in hospitals. In this way, they proved to be very successful in the treatment of plagues, the terrible plagues that arrived in the city of Rome in the 1500s and in the 1600s.
world is going through with the present-day pandemic has inspired us to research previous similar contexts in the history of the Eternal City. We have outlined only a few of the many plagues that affected Rome over time, killing millions of people, changing society, and overthrowing the way of life.
Ah, yes, the famous plague of the 1300s, the one which apparently killed 2/3 of the population of the known world at the time.
Of course, we haven't mentioned the Black Death because the Black Death did not come to Rome, and the people believed that it was thanks to the direct intervention of the Virgin Mary. And in fact, we were sitting on the steps that were built exactly as a Thanksgiving gesture. We're talking about the middle of the 1300s, heading up towards the Church of Mary at the altar of heaven, Thanksgiving gesture to the Virgin for having helped in escaping that plague. Listen to the roar of the city.
Well, it is rush hour.
Which rush hour? The one that starts at 7 in the morning and ends at 9 at night.
It never ends.
I don't know, the city of Rome with its swarming with people, traffic, the eternal city, it really makes me think about the resilience of humanity that manages to always come out even of the most difficult circumstances.
I think we need to go for a gelato.
You're right. I think it's about time for gelato.